Good afternoon and welcome to the Leadership Learning webinar series. This series provides monthly learning on relevant business topics like today's topic, managing global teams. I am Natalie Corrado, Corporate Programs Associate at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. We at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management are proud to be hosting today's program. Lake Forest is an independent, accredited institution with over 50 years experience at providing practical business leader education. This education comes in the form of an MBA degree, certificate programs, and targeted training and development through our Corporate Learning Solutions programs. Corporate Learning Solutions specializes in developing corporate managers and leaders by combining relevant content with the expertise of our business leader faculty to provide customized training, consultation, coaching, and organizational development services to our corporate clients. We are grateful for the sponsorship and generosity of our client and longtime supporter of the school, Trustmark and the Trustmark Foundation. Trustmark provides access to a full spectrum of flexible benefit solutions, including health plan administration for self-funded employer groups, payroll-deducted voluntary products, group medical benefits, and health and fitness management programs. We're able to bring this webinar to you on a complimentary basis as a result of Trustmark's support. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Janice Aull, our facilitator for today's session. Janice teaches effective leadership and facilitates corporate learning programs at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. Janice is the manager of organizational capability at CDW. For over 10 years, she has been consulting with business stakeholders to plan, design, facilitate, and assess a variety of blended learning solutions. Janice is a passionate and experienced performance improvement facilitator and wellness advocate, promoting a culture of continuous learning and the practical application of newly acquired skills for personal and professional development. Janice's focus is in the discipline of social intelligence. She enjoys inspiring individuals to truly understand themselves, identify their barriers and opportunities, and then design a strategy to move towards achieving positive relationships and results. Janice, we are pleased to have you here today.
Thank you, Natalie. Welcome, everybody. For those that have just joined us, we will have the handout, and if you go to, let me stop sharing for a second. If you click on the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you will see where it says File. Click on File, and then File Transfer. Highlight the Word document, and you go ahead and you could download that. And that's the handout that we will be referring to today. And if you have a second monitor, you could pop this open on your second monitor. Otherwise, you can print it off and refer to it later. We will also be using polls, and we will also be using the chat box. At any time, if you have any questions, just feel free to chat, and we are monitoring that. If you have a difficult time hearing us, if something's going on, we will be using chat as part of the participation for using that. So let's go ahead and begin and get ready with our presentation. So we're going to start with our first poll. And let me go ahead and get the poll started here. What I'd like you to do is answer the question, how many different cultures do you deal with on a daily basis? And let me open the poll for you. So you should see the poll. So go ahead and answer. Just click on your response, and I believe you just have to hit enter. How many different cultures do you deal with on a daily basis? And you have 4 options. We have people just flying in. I will close the poll in about 30 seconds. So how many different cultures do you deal with on a daily basis? All right, I'm closing the poll in 10 seconds. Ready? And let's see the response. Polls are closed. We have to wait for a second for them to load, and then I'll share the results. For those of you that are just joining, we will go ahead and have the handout for you. We'll share how to download that towards the end of the session, and we'll also be emailing it to everybody as well. All right, let's go ahead and share the results with everybody. So it's pretty much tied for 1 to 3 cultures, 4 to 7. We have a couple people that deal with 12+ different cultures. Excellent. Excellent. And the reason why I asked that question is because, as you're probably realizing, the world is shrinking. It's getting smaller. We'll talk about that. And as we're dealing with people constantly on a daily basis, many of us from all over the world, and it impacts how we communicate. So what I'd like you to do now is in your chat box, and do chat to all, is what are the benefits of dealing with a global team? So what's the benefits of dealing with a global workforce? So on chat, just go ahead and make sure you put send to all participants. And what are the benefits of working with a global workforce? What's the value? And let's see what you have to share with your peers. So you have different perspectives coming in, get some great new ideas, diversity of thought, multiple viewpoints, which means you get better results and ideas. You look at things from a bigger picture, more of a global perspective, different challenges. So it could be the benefit of just having different things you have to overcome. So a couple things, hold those thoughts. With the challenges, we're going to come to that on the next poll. Get new ideas, great ideas, opportunity to think outside the box. And Tracy will talk about how that impacts all the different from a regulations perspective. And you have a vast skill set that you can tap into, and you have access to additional markets. Exactly. There's a lot of benefits to dealing with the global workforce, but as some of you have already commented, there's some challenges of working with a global workforce. So add into the chat box, what are the challenges? What are those challenges that come with having to deal with a global team? And especially if you're a leader, what are the challenges for managing a global team? Opportunities for miscommunication, yes. Language barriers, time zone differences, yes. It's, different opinions, it's a plus and it's a minus, right? If you have so many different ideas, how do you get the best one and get people to come to a consensus? Different ways of dealing with problems, could be a plus and also a minus. Just understanding issues and how people perceive things and how they're seeing things. Different holidays and availability, yes, the holidays and schedules really has an impact. Different expectations from a culture perspective as well. Different regulations that came up earlier too. Different priorities, expectations. The technology, yes, you know, in the movies and on TV, they make technology look so simple, but as you try to implement it, sometimes it's just not there. Limited face time, just being able to deal with people's facial responses and to deal with their expressions that they're making. So there are definitely challenges to working in the global workforce, as well as there's benefits. So today we're going to spend some time just really looking at how can we as individuals adopt a multiple frame or different perspective of how we're looking at things from a global perspective. What are the key elements for us as individuals to keep in mind when we're dealing with people from all over the world? And then how do you build trust and influence across the different cultures and the different teams around the world? And what can you do to really influence your peers and also to build the trust in the relationships? And then we'll share some tips in influencing how to be more sensitive to the different cultures and different communication needs that people have in the workforce around the world. And I'm also going to be encouraging you to share with your peers, and we'll do that through chat, to learn from each other, because we have people on the phone that deal with people from a global perspective on a daily basis. Share your best practices and tap into the knowledge that we have. So as I'm sure you've heard in many articles, your senior leaders at the organization that you're at, people are a key asset, and they're what really drives the success of an organization. And so it's important that we really tap into the diversity that people are bringing and that we're leveraging the global perspective that people have. So let's talk about what culture is. So culture, and this is on page 3 of your handout for those that were able to download it, and I'll share with the other ones in a minute how to do that. So culture is a set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution, an organization, or a group. So I want to pause for a minute and have you think about that definition, especially those last 3 words. It's the 4 words. It's the characteristics of an institution, organization, or group. And it's that shared attitude, values, goals, and practices. So now that I've shared that definition with you, what I'd like to do is ask you, how many cultures are you a member of? So let me share a poll. Another poll is popping up. So how many cultures are you a member of? Using the definition we just used, how many cultures are you a member of? And the definition of a culture is a set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution, an organization, or a group. So how many different cultures are you a member of? And you should see the poll up on your screen. Just go ahead and click, and then hit enter or click outside, and it should go ahead and send your results in. Waiting for a few more responses to see. Interesting as I'm watching the poll results from this side. All right, we're going to give you 10 more seconds to go ahead. I'm going to close the polls. Let's see what the response is. We got to wait a couple seconds. So thinking about the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution, an organization, or a group, and what people say as far as how many cultures they are a member of. The results are, drum roll please. So there again, majority of people are saying it's 1 to 3. Some folks are saying we have 4 to 7, and then a couple people are the 8 to 11 or 12 plus. And the first question could be a misleading or trick question, because if you think about it, if you think that you are a member of multiple cultures within your day-to-day routine, you have the culture that you belong to in your family, and you have the culture of your immediate family, the people that you live with. You have your extended family culture. And then you probably have a couple extensions from the family. And then you have work. And if you think about work, the team that you are working on has a culture. The department that you work in has a culture. The office location that you are in, if any of you work where there's multiple offices around the world, each office has its own culture and characteristics. And then you have the division, and you also have the organization. So on a regular basis, you're dealing with multiple cultures, not just from a global perspective, but also in your day-to-day life and how you're interacting. And what you'll hopefully learn some tips today is how can you leverage all those different cultures and to really be successful as an individual. And it's not good, and culture is not bad, it's not good, it's just different, right? Every culture is different. We have different things to consider, and they all add value. The key is to tap into that. So it's a flat world out there, and it's getting flatter. It started with the Globalization 1.0 when countries opened up to start sharing resources and tapping into the different resources that were available in the different countries. That then led to an opportunity for companies to start reaching out and opening up branches and tapping into the resources that are in the different countries, as well as selling their products in the different countries. And then with Globalization 3.0, it really helped with the economic and political systems opening up. So organizations were able to start outsourcing resources. They start doing some offshoring, and they were starting to use business and process models to tap into the diversity that was and the resources that were available from a global perspective. And now with technology, it's anytime, anywhere. So now globalization has opened up to the whole world for individuals and small groups and small businesses. So, a consultant of one can reach a global audience very easily with the way technology is. So the world's getting smaller, it's shrinking, it's becoming flat, and we could really tap into that. And every organization, even a domestic organization, is dealing from a global perspective, because chances are their workforce is diverse, and they have a very unique workforce with many different differences to tap into. So the key for us and for the organizations is just to be open to learning, to be flexible, and to understand, and as you mentioned in the chat box, that we do need to take location and distances and time zones into place. There are going to be cultural differences, and it could even be within the country that you work in, within the regions of the country, there's going to be cultural differences to deal with. And workplace expectations may be different as well. So as an individual, it's being open to learning, asking those questions, and being mindful of all the different interactions that you're dealing with on a daily basis. So what I'd like to do now is think about the different, thinking globally, the global relationships at an individual level. So when you're dealing with people on an individual level from a global perspective, what are the factors to be taken into consideration that you need to be mindful of? So what are differences that you need to keep in mind as an individual when dealing with people from a global perspective at an individual level? So go ahead and chat in the chat box. So when you're dealing with people one-on-one across the world at that individual relationship level, what are the factors that you need to take into consideration or be mindful of when dealing with people? So go ahead and chat, and make sure you're chatting to all participants. So understanding that people may misinterpret information, values, beliefs, and norms may be different. The cultures are going to be different, like how, where making eye contact, personal space, priorities that people have, people's feelings and expressing their feelings, or do they not express their feelings? Speaking, do we speak too loud, too soft, too quickly? What's history between the companies, the country? There's a lot of different things to consider. If you're dealing with people and you're not face-to-face, it's understanding the body language. And there again, the body language could be different. And then just behaviors and how to address people and how to deal with folks on a one-to-one basis. Personalities are still different on top of cultures, yes. So we're not only dealing with cultural differences, but we're dealing with personality differences. Excellent, thank you. And it's understanding those perspectives that people are bringing. And then understand how open people are to being open themselves and sharing what their thoughts are, and maybe challenging status quo. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. And then the differences of doing business from a global perspective, and are there cultural differences to keep in mind? A lot of different things. So we have as someone mentioned, we have the looking at from a global and then cultural, but then also as an individual perspective to be dealing with that. And then it's individual to individual, male to female, superior to direct report, you have all that to take into consideration. So it's important to establish that trust. Yes. So workforce is defined by our individuals. We're all unique, no matter what culture and what country we live in. What you see on the screen are all things that make us up as individuals. We all have our unique talents, our style of communication, our physical abilities, our beliefs from a religious perspective, from a value perspective, education. And those are all different things to take into consideration when dealing with people from a global perspective. So it's to keep in mind that, yes, you might be dealing with a different country, but you're also dealing with people and people as individuals, and to take that into consideration. And so to do that, and one thing to think about is that what are the cultural norms? And this is on page 3 of your handout, is just understanding the cultural norms that are being presented. And there's a code or the rules of the game, and the thing is not to get lost in the abstractions, but just to ask questions, be in that learning mindset, and to really observe and listen and figure out what's different from the home culture that you're working with, and what are the different levels of degree that you're seeing with what you see on the screen. So are people really open to being enthusiastic, or do they keep that more private and keep that more to themselves? So you have the high context cultures, and that would include much of the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and South America. So it's more that relational, intuitive folks, and they focus more on the interpersonal relationship, versus the low context cultures, which more the North America and most of the Western Europe, which that logical, linear, individualistic, action focused. And these cultures tend to value logic, facts, and directness. But there again, that's the culture of the country does not mean it's going to be the same for everybody as an individual. So it's to really ask and find out, how do people deal with time? Do they look at time more as a fluid, or is it more of that definite? Do people put family before work, or is work before family? Every culture is different in that perspective. How do people deal with individuals? So they value where the individual comes first, or does working with the group come first? Is it okay to challenge the boss? And how do we handle gift giving, holidays, holiday schedules, meeting times, meeting in private places versus public places, public spaces? All the different things to take into consideration. And your handout, which I'll refer to, and if you haven't had a chance to download, I'll refer to that, has additional information in there for you on that. So we not only then have the cultural norms to consider, so that's from the outside perspective if you're dealing with the global perspective, also as the individual, but then it's also where are you coming from as an individual. So it's what are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your biases? And it's taking time out to stop and ask yourself, where are you coming from and what are your thoughts? People might feel, if you're used to being successful in your current role and used to being maybe in a senior position, and now you're needing to deal with a completely different culture that's so new to you, being forced in that new mindset can be intimidating, and it could be new if it's something that you haven't experienced, that newness you haven't experienced in a long period of time. So it could be having that, just being uncomfortable and not understanding how you fit in and what to do. So and it's okay to feel that way, but then it's also to work through that and understand where you're coming from, what do you need to do to get over that. Some people may become resentful because, why do I need to adapt? We've always done it this way. Why do we have to do it? It's difficult, it's hard, it's stressful. My meeting times have to change. But it's understanding that as we grow, as organizations grow and expand, it's that dealing with change and the world is shrinking, we need to deal with people from a global perspective. But what's interesting is when you're stressed out, you generally are not at your most creative and productive. So it's understanding when you're stressed out to take that time to pause, step back, see where you're at, and what can you do to deal with that and mitigate that stress so you can be more productive and more creative. And then also this understanding biases. And biases are a preference for or against. The key is not to use the biases to make a judgment, like your way is the right way. It's just to understand, do you have a bias, other people have biases, what are those? Be open to the learning and to understand where people are coming from and what their perspectives are. So we have to deal with things from a global culture perspective and also as individuals and as people. I'm going to open up another poll. So we've talked about cultural and dealing it from a global perspective. So now let's look at you as an individual. And what does it take for you, and what do you need to focus on when you want to build trust? So at this poll, you're able to check all that apply. So when building trust, what does it take to build trust? So check any or all that you see in your poll. So when building trust, what does it take to build trust? And you'll see 6 potential answers. You can check all that apply. As an individual, when you're trying to build trust with someone, what is it that you need? All right, we got a couple more people. I will give you 10 seconds to select what does it take to build trust. You can select any or all or 1 or 2, but what are your thoughts? All right, let's close the polls. Polls are closing. We need to wait a couple minutes. And someone had mentioned that it's important to establish trust, so thank you for mentioning that in the chat. And let's see the responses. 5 seconds. I'll share these with you right now. So the majority selected that, yes, all 6 of these are very important for building trust. It's having that integrity being sincere, and if you don't know, to ask those questions, or if you made a mistake, to apologize and let people know. Being reliable, so following through, making that commitment, being consistent with everyone that you're dealing with, and being confident in the skills that you're bringing to the table, and it's that following through and delivering your side of the commitment that has been made. So building relationships does take all of these. It does take that integrity and sincerity, reliability, trust, consistency, and competence. And it's also understanding the why. And some of you mentioned this in the earlier chat. To really help get to know people, it's lowering that waterline, to really get to know who people are as individuals. What are their past experiences? What are their communication styles? And that goes with that cultural norm. How are they used to communicating? How are they comfortable communicating? And how do they deal with relationships? And what are their expectations with the relationships and their different perspectives? And who would like to type in the chat of how do you find all this stuff out? How do you lower the waterline? Type in the chat. How do you make this happen? Type in the chat. How do you lower the waterline? How do you build relationships with people? And if you have any tips or tricks that you share with people from across cultural perspective, share that as well. So how do you get to know folks? How do you really lower that waterline? So it's getting to know people on a one-on-one basis. Yes, you could use tools like DISC, Social Styles, Myers-Briggs. Do some research before actually communicating so you have some understanding. Frequent communication, yes. So it's those short hits on a more frequent basis. Talk to people, understand the differences of people, and share with other folks, yes. So it's that communication. Asking questions and then also listening. So yes, thank you. It's act, listen, and act. Get to know your audience. And it's communication from multiple different perspectives. So it's talking over the phone, using video conferencing, talking live, and find areas of common, yes. So I'm one of those folks that truly believes no matter who you meet in the world, you could find at least 3 things you have in common with them. But it's asking those questions and really listening and diving down to figure that out. Keeping your commitment, that really builds that trust. Study abroad, that would be an excellent opportunity for those that have that. I know Lake Forest Graduate School does offer an opportunity to study abroad, so highly encourage you to look into that. That would be a great experience because you're not only traveling globally, you're also learning and getting credit for it. Ta-da! That one-to-one communication, yes, listen. If you can, frequent visits, that would be nice. Sometimes budget constraints. Being open and transparent, so that being honest with yourself and being open and letting people know, like, help me out. I'm not sure if I understand. Most people are very willing to help folks out. Asking questions about personal life, and sometimes you have to lower that waterline gently because some people might not feel comfortable. So it's figuring how much you could ask to get to know people. But as Renee mentioned, it says really get to know people on a personal level and communicate on a personal level versus looking at people as a group of people. You're looking at people as a professional on a one-to-one basis. And yes, being willing to do that early morning or late night phone call. So you're in your pajamas, you're on the WebEx, so you could accommodate someone so they could have that meeting. And it's taking turns rotating. So excellent. Excellent responses. Thank you. All right, let's move along and talk about what does it take to really respect differences. And as you'll see a theme here, it's really learning. I want to tap into really learning from each other. So what I'd like you to do is in your chat there again, what does it mean to respect differences? So to you, what does it mean to respect differences? So what does it mean to respect differences? No judgment. Excellent. Thank you. What else? What does it mean to respect differences? Yes, don't try and force your beliefs. There's that bias coming in, right? Your bias is the right way. No, that's your bias, that's your thought, not to use that as a judgment, so thank you. Listening. Understanding the differences will exist, yes, so understanding, seeking those out, and then respecting them. keeping an open mind. Take risks, try new things. Yes, that's a great one, is to put yourself out there and try something new. Find that common ground. It's out there. Allow people equal time to express their ideas, yes, and that's respecting differences from a communication style as well. Is for some folks, it's just taking time to stop, pause, listen, and not talk. Criticizing needlessly is not going to really build trust. It's not going to show any respect. Patience. I hope you are like copying and pasting these chats into a Word doc, because we've got some great thoughts and ideas here. Be in tune to local holidays and adjust where possible. So, and it just takes some planning up front, but if you put that on your calendar and you have it, and there's going to be, and you can even celebrate the different holidays and recognize, just saying things to someone to recognize a holiday would mean a lot to people, and then really see things from other people's point of view. Yes. Other things on here that I have on my notes is admit that others have integrity and they see issues differently. So just admit that people see things differently. They have a different perspective. Appreciating the differences, we already said that. Accepting human qualities different from our own. So it's okay for people to be different. We all don't have to be the same. In fact, you want that difference because that's going to add more value to the team. That's what you mentioned in our first chat of the value of having a global workforce, is that you get all the diversity and you have those different mindsets and different ideas. And it's empowering people and promoting the human spirit. So it's empowering people to allow themselves to be individuals and to add value to the business and to recognize them for that, and to value that uniqueness that they each bring. So it's valuing it, respecting it, and acknowledging it, and celebrate people as individuals. And that is going to really show people that you're respecting the differences and that you want them to share their points of view and their thoughts. Excellent. So now let's go into how do you leverage the differences. So we talked about respecting it. So now you're a leader, you're working on a global team, you have people from all over the globe, as well as within the home country that you're in, from different regions, different departments, different organizations. How do you really leverage the differences that people are bringing to the table to really be successful with the project goals, or the team goals? So go ahead and type in chat. Yes, we're making you interact and really type a lot today. This way it keeps you engaged, and we're learning from you, and you're learning from each other. So how do you really leverage the differences that people are bringing from the global cultural team that you're working on? And like we said earlier, it's not just from the global perspective, it's also working cross-functionally with different teams and different folks from the different regions within the home country. So first you have to really find out what are the differences. So get to know folks, lower that waterline, and then the value that those differences are going to bring to the team. How can you tap into that and map that out? Then it's just embrace and display your support for their beliefs. Yeah, so let people know that, hey, we're going to figure this out. So that's that trial and error of how can we collaborate as a team? How can we make this work? How can we identify what our different perspectives are and our different ideas, and how can we tap into that? And so to acknowledge that and talk about it and take time to do that, take time to view and determine which approach is best. So it's sometimes you have to go slow in order to go fast, right? So it's that slow down in order to go fast. So take the time to understand the people side of things before you start diving in onto the project and trying to figure things out. Yep. Seek out ideas that are different from your own. I like that because you're looking at it from one way, get it from someone else's perspective. Yes, never dismiss anyone's ideas without addressing all opinions. So it's really stop and think and look at it evaluate it from the pros and the cons. Those are great ideas. Different ideas from different markets. Some are using a tool, so use the SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is identifying whether the strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses focuses on the internal aspect, opportunities and threats, and more of the external factor of what are the cultural differences and what they're bringing to the team, and how they might be impacting the team's goals or objectives. And solve problems using different thinking. if you think of some of the some great ideas pop in from people that are from a totally different perspective, or even from a totally different part of the organization. Give people an opportunity to share. So yes, if you have to get up early in the morning and have that meeting at 3 o'clock in the morning just so people could have that collaboration, do that. It's going to make a big difference. Acknowledge the role of the team to superiors, yes. So to really let people know the value that working as a team brings, and that it's important to take the time to really stop and look at things from that perspective. Excellent. Great ideas. So if I mentioned this earlier, copy, paste into a Word doc, you got some great ideas to leverage, and you're learning off each other. And this is also on page 7 of your handout. I left room for you to do that. So the global mindset it's looking at things from 3 different perspectives. It's from a systematic perspective. So what are the practices with the global organization that you're working with, or with the culture that you're working with? What are the practices? What are the procedures that you're dealing with, and what are processes? And it's taking time, and someone had mentioned that earlier in the chat, just to do that research to really find out where is that culture coming from. But then it's also looking at it from an individual perspective. Where are you from being self-aware of how you're influencing and how you're dealing with other people? And if you haven't, I encourage you to do research on emotional intelligence and to really understand where you are from that self-awareness and how you're interacting with people, and how you are adapting to how people are interacting with how you're interacting with people. And then have the courage to take that chance. And a couple people mentioned this in the chat room. Is to have the courage to get out of your comfort zone and try something new, or to say, I don't know, or what are your thoughts? But then it's also looking at the culture from a social perspective, and how does the social side of the culture, how do they understand working together as a team, value people's ideas, support each other as a team, expectations that they have. So it's looking at it from the big picture, the social perspective, as well as the individual level for yourself, and then for that of others. And it's taking that time to think about things from this perspective before you dive in to really start looking at what do we need to do as a team, and what challenges do we need to overcome. So let's talk about some how we can enhance global relationships, and things that you could do and things that your team can do. So what I'd like you to do again is in the chat, for those that are accustomed, because many of you are dealing with multiple, remember the polls, you're dealing with multiple cultures on a daily basis. What are some things that you are doing to enhance global relationships? What are you doing to build global relationships, and what are things that you are having teams do to build that global relationship? And reply to all peers, copy and paste into the Word doc, because you're going to get some great ideas. So understanding the different contexts of the differences and how they apply to the challenge. So it's, what are those differences that people have, and then how can we apply that to the challenge that we're facing? What other things that you could do to enhance a global relationship? What can you do individually, and what can you have the team do? Inter-office competitions are always fun. Yes, food is always, food is a way to people's heart. You can't go wrong with food. So have fun, and there's ways you could celebrate. And for those that are commenting about food and inter-office competitions, how can you take that on a global level? So and I have a couple thoughts, but how can you take that? You have people from all over the world. How can you spread the food and the fun across from a global perspective? Spend time with people one-on-one. Record WebExes, that's a great idea. Yes, technology is phenomenal. So you could record it. You got newsletters, include people. Clear communication. I'm a true believer you cannot over-communicate. So it's just to really set clear expectations, clear communication, and communicate often. FaceTime whenever possible. That's when video comes in so handy. So someone celebrates all the regional holidays. So do you celebrate with food, or do you just send what that holiday means and what people do, and is it people learn what the traditions are? That's interesting. Food and email information. Cool. So it's people could have a dish, and then they could also learn what people do. team building events when visiting, so you work that in, and when you do go visit the other office or the other location, it's to fit time in just to do some team time. So you're rotating as much as possible to schedule those meetings. Encourage attendance and participation. Yes, that from a meeting facilitation perspective is to know who all the participants are and then encourage people and give people time to share. And then also remember, keep in mind the different cultural norms, that some people may not be comfortable speaking out loud. So on the cultural norm, to allow people different opportunities to share. So if they're not speaking, maybe they could type something in, or they could other ways to share and provide their input. Some people are not comfortable speaking off the top of their head, so maybe to allow people to respond to a survey question by a certain date. So chat groups, yes. So weekly communication, so that's like standard. We're going to keep doing this. Yes, show interest, a true, genuine interest of just asking people, yes. And then share what you've learned with other folks. Thank you. That's a great one. I'm going to see what else we have. Lots of chats coming. This is awesome. And it's lunchtime, so I'm thinking about food. I'm like, oh man, that would be so. And other things, other questions you could ask yourself. So this is not on the slide, so you may want to write this down. And someone mentioned this before about do some research. So here's some specific research you could look at. One question is, what do you know about the region? So ask yourself, what do you know about the region? And if you don't know much, then go find out. Where can you find out? Is it Google? Is it Bing? Because I want to acknowledge Microsoft. Can you Bing? Is it researching? Is it asking people on your team? So what do you know about the region? The other question is, what do you know about the culture of the company? So remember I talked about earlier that cultures at a company will be different based on where they're located. So it could be the same company, but in multiple offices, and I guarantee the culture at every one of those offices is going to be different. So what do you know about the culture of the company at that location? How can you find out? And then the third question to write down is, what do you know about the people? So what do you know about the people that you're dealing with from that office that you're going to go to? What are the demographics? What are the tenure? Are they new? Have they been there for a long time? Are they local folks, or are they from a more of a city and cosmopolitan area? So what are their demographics? Who are they as individuals? So questions to ask yourself before you're dealing with folks is, what do you know about the region? What do you know about the culture of the company? And what do you know about the people on an individual basis? And then someone has also said to really establish, to enhance that team perspective, is to really set those rules of engagement and how teams will work together and can communicate. So as a faculty member for the grad school, when we do teamwork, I find the teams that are most successful are the ones that take that time up front to set the rules of engagement and to talk about their differences, who they are, what their backgrounds are, and they're lowering that waterline and they're creating that the team guidelines at the front before they dive into the team project, and those are the ones that are most successful. So the three questions again that someone asked is, what do you know about the region? So ask yourself, what do you know about the region you're dealing with? What do you know about the culture of the company? And there again, the culture of the company will be different based on the different office locations. So what do you know? So you have to look at it from two different perspectives. The culture of the company overall, but then the culture of the company at that location. And then the third question is, what do you know about the people? So what do you know about the people at that location that you're working with? What are their demographics? How long have they been with the company? Is there medium age? Are they from local, or are they from the city? I've been in places to where I've gone to an office to where everyone in the office was from another part. So there was like no one from that city working in the office. Everyone was a transplant from another part of the United States, which is really interesting. So there were no local people. Everybody had been transferred in. All right. So we've covered quite a bit. So we talked about what you can do, and you have it in your chat, so you still have the chat box open. So we talked about what you could do as an individual, things that you could do to help the team. And it's looking at things from a systemic, individual, and social level, so that global mindset of looking at the big picture, individual, social, what it takes to respect and leverage the differences that people are bringing to the team. How do you lower that waterline to really get to know people on a one-to-one basis, because that's what's going to build that trust, and that's by using integrity, sincerity, reliability, commitment, consistency, and being confident in what you do. And then also understanding where your mindset is when you're dealing with people. Are there some anxieties that you need and biases that you need to think about and to take into consideration while you're working with folks? It's understanding learning what the cultural norms are for the culture that you're working with. Is it a high context culture or low context culture? And then who are folks from an individual perspective? Like, what are they bringing to the table? Who are they? What are their skill sets, their job level, their communication style, their physical abilities, to really get to know people on an individual basis. Because then we talked about this and you shared some great things with each other, but it all boils down to, what are you going to do differently? So what I'd like you to do, and before I do that, I'm going to stop sharing for those that joined the call. I'm stopping to share because if you look in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, and if you click on the whiteboard that says handout, hopefully that's showing, or click on the upper left-hand corner of the screen under File, then File Transfer, you could highlight the Word document and download that. And that is the handout that I have been referring to. And that has additional information in it for you to use, and it has what we covered today. And you could also then copy and paste what's in the chat box into this document and edit it down to capture the great ideas that your peers have shared throughout this session. So we go to File, File Transfer, Download Handout. And I'll give you a minute to do that, and then you could copy and paste the chat box into that document, so then you could edit it down and have some great ideas that you've shared from your peers. And then we're going to go back to PowerPoint presentation. So now what I'd like you to do is in the chat box, and for those that have worked with me in the past, it's what are you going to do differently? It's one thing to sit on a WebEx, and you may have been multitasking and checking emails or doing other things, but what are you going to do differently? Because it's all about applying what you've learned. That's when true learning takes place, is when you actually do something with what you've learned. So what I'd like you to do is in the chat box, what's one thing you plan on doing differently, or what tools you plan on using now that you've had a chance to learn from your peers. So we have approximately 55 people on the call, so I should see 55 responses. What's that one thing you plan on doing differently now that you've had an opportunity to learn from your peers and see what it takes to have that global mindset? And really focus on the behaviors. What's that behavior that you're going to change, and is it a measurable behavior? So I would challenge some of you to say, I'm going to communicate at least 3 times a week with the other office. I'm going to use the phone versus email at least 5 times a week. Someone, Tony, you're going to do more international travel. Excellent if your budget can handle it, and do not go to your boss and say, Janice said that we should travel more often, because they might not know who I am. So learn more about the people. So there again, I'm going to get to know 3 people this week. I'm going to spend 15 minutes with 3 different people this week. So it's those measurable, SMART goals. I'm going to set better expectations. I'm going to take time to do the research for the cultures of my coworkers. Excellent. So yes, use video conferencing. And I know you're typing in chat, so you're not making them into the SMART goal, but it's that measurable. My weekly meeting will be as video conference. I'm going to allow 15 minutes before each team meeting to really get to know people, or we're going to take 30 minutes to establish the ground rules. Ooh, share it with the extended team, the extended leadership team. So we could talk, yeah, excellent. And I'm sure if you're interested in having Lake Forest Graduate School come in and work with you on an individual basis, your organization on an individual basis, we'd be more than happy to make accommodations to do that as well. We could tailor this in multiple different ways. So study the countries and cultures you do business with. I like that idea. It's awesome, and many of you mentioned that, but can you make it, someone else had mentioned earlier, make it a like fun team event? So maybe it's highlight a culture once a month. So there again, you're making it that SMART goal. So utilize the technology of or FaceTime, so either FaceTime or technology or real FaceTime. And then set up more one-on-one meetings. Yep, and it's accept their views and opinions, and to really stop and listen. Yes, and utilize, and thank you for bringing it up on most companies have some excellent intranet tools that you could tap into from a cultural training and understanding the cultural differences, but also from a technology perspective. So if you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend that you get to know your IT folks, because they want you to use this technology, and they are more than happy to help teach you how to use it. And once you practice using it, it's not that difficult to use. So highly recommend that you start leveraging technology. And with the smartphones and the tablets, you as an individual, you don't even need an organization backing you up. You could just download an app and you have it right there available to you. And I saw something else pop in that I wanted to see. Hang on, I gotta see. Yeah, there are a couple people who want to travel more. Go to Lake Forest Graduate School. They're doing a global class this coming summer. Where are we going, Natalie?
I'm not sure.
If you go to the website, we'll say where it's at. Excellent. I like to set that pattern of really establishing the norm of how you're recognizing and accommodating the different teams. Excellent. So what we'd like to do now, a couple different things. I'm going to share with you some upcoming webinars that we have. So on April 28th, we have Understanding Unconscious Bias. There again, it's sponsored by Trustmark, so you can sign up for that through the website, as well as May 18th. So mark your calendar now so people don't take your time. And we'll be talking about the 13 deadly sins of networking online and off. So both of those promise to be very, very interesting, and I know you're going to be able to get some things that are very helpful from that perspective. So with that, we also would like to, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie to talk about the survey that we have.
Thank you, Janice, and thank you to all of you for participating and chatting in some great comments. That was a great session. We hope you've gotten some good information from this session. Today's program was part of the Leadership Learning Webinar Series delivered to you by Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. The program is an extension of our business management education, which is also part of our MBA degree program in corporate learning solutions. This program was made possible by our sponsor, the Trustmark Foundation. Again, our deepest thanks for their support. We value your feedback. You will notice in the chat box a link to complete a survey. We use this information to continually improve our sessions, so we appreciate if you could take a minute to complete the survey. I will also send an email with the link and a copy of the recording from today's session and the handouts that were downloaded. With that, we'd like to end the session and wish you a productive rest of your day.
Thank you, and give you 5 minutes of your time back, so you have 5 minutes to get from one meeting to the next meeting. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
We'll see you next time.